No hate, no hype, no fear.
You're listening to Truth Frequency Radio.
We are TFR.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Strange World, where the truth is often stranger than fiction. This is Jonathan, broadcasting from an undisclosed location in a bunker, waiting for the end of the world. Actually, we do have Mark Sargent here, so don't get worried. Mark?
I am actually here with Jonathan in the bunker. I was not restrained in any way to get down here.
I was actually going to say this is actually Buffalo Bill from an undisclosed location in Ohio.
Wow.
What's that a reference to?
It puts the lotion on its skin, or it gets the hose again.
Right. I just thought it was a little too dark, but
well, it is a little dark, but it's good because it's dated. It's a classic.
And you and I love movie references, so we try to keep it light because this is a heavy subject.
Yeah.
We thought we would do a little spin. Actually, Mark thought. Why don't you tell them what we're going to do tonight?
Tonight we are going to do kind of a reverse thing. It's going to be because we've waited 4 episodes to before we talked about anything flat Earth related on this show. I just want to get some other stuff out there, and there's so much content on flat Earth that's coming out lately. I figured, you know what, let's go in a different direction, and then here we are, episode 5, and so now we're gonna do. It's going to be called. In fact, once we're done and I put it up, it's going to be called Flat Earth Clues Review or Flat Earth Review. I haven't really made up my mind yet. But Jonathan is going to be interviewing me. Thought I'd give him a chance to test out his interviewing chops.
And I thought it was a great idea because I'm always asking you questions, as you get many questions emailed to you and calls, and so it seemed right.
Yeah, totally agree.
So,
what do you got, man?
I know. I'm
excited. Oh, by the way, I'm excited to be on the show. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh, thank you, Mark. I'm glad you can make it this evening.
Yeah.
Man, where to start? What do you ask a guy who believes in a flat Earth? Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. I just heard you on George Norrie the other night.
Yeah.
So that's pretty exciting. And you were incredible. You just put it all out there. And I think you even changed some skeptics' minds, including George. He sounded really convinced.
Well, thank you. And I was surprised as well because we didn't start that thing. By the way, for those of you who don't know, when they say Coast to Coast AM, they're not kidding. It's I didn't even get on the air with him until 2 a.m. my time. So no, I'm sorry, 1 a.m. my time, and then we didn't take questions until 2, and we wrapped up at like 3. But fun show.
Yeah, and that's a show that I guess I got introduced to certain conspiracy theories, but also just the fringe stuff, everything from UFOs to ghosts to anything that fell into that gray area, like what is it? And it's a great late night show, especially if you're a truck driver from 1 a.m. till 5 a.m. You have something carrying you long haul all across the country. You could always pick it up on the next AM station.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of listeners out there who heard that.
Yeah, and there were several truckers that were calling in, which was neat. That there's one thing about technology you got to love, and that is, nowadays not only can they listen, but they can call in from the road and talk. It's fantastic.
Right. Well, you know what? I'm going to start with this question because I never considered this. They're calling it the mother of all conspiracies, right? And I'm like, what makes this the mother? I mean, there's other conspiracies out there. There's JFK,
9/11,
Area 51.
Yeah. Well, you already go back to the first one that was kind of, you look up online, if you type in the mother of all conspiracies, the first one that comes up really was Pearl Harbor, and even then I don't think that's true. Not that the Pearl Harbor wasn't a conspiracy, but I don't think that's the biggest conspiracy or even the oldest right now. But I'm sorry, did you have a second part to that, or were you just asking me?
No, I'm just wondering why this one has now kind of taken that title at present.
I'm going to blame Lisa M. Harrison out of I believe that was Australia. The one of the early interviews that I did, and she threw that in there like right off the bat. She said, if this is true, this is the mother of all conspiracies. And I said, "Wow, that's quite an honor." But the more I thought about it, the more in fact, that's what it's called on her channel, on her YouTube channel. It's called the Mother of All Conspiracies. That's just what she went with. She completely abandoned the whole flat Earth title and went with that because I don't think she knew what she wanted to go with. But absolutely, it encompasses everything, and we'll probably touch on it in later shows. But this is a conspiracy that's so big, in fact, big isn't even the right word. It encompasses so much inside of it, literally, that you really have to revisit every other conspiracy that you've ever touched on in your life. Not necessarily revamp it or retool it, but you've got to look at it from that perspective. So now, you've got to look at, anything you can think of. You've got to say, okay, does this conspiracy change in an enclosed world? And I think several of them do. So yeah, from is it the mother of all conspiracies? It's definitely holds them all. So yeah, it's a good as term as any. And I know that term is sort of that's sort of dated because I think that was used in the Gulf War, wasn't it? It was like the mother of all battles, or that was a Norman Schwarzkopf reference, if I'm not mistaken. But that was 25 years ago now, the Gulf War. So yeah. Totally.
And you're absolutely right. Where it ties in, at least for me, is that if this is true, if there's a flat Earth and there's no more going into space, so that kind of shoots down the conspiracy of the moon, or at least puts it into a framework. Well, what is it? Did we go through the barrier? There's a lot of questions I want to ask you during the show.
Sure.
It also brings up what now is the agenda of the Illuminati, those favorite characters that all us conspiracy people love.
The Illuminati.
The Illuminati.
Yes.
And of course, it not, I don't want to say condone, that's not the right word, but you can almost now see where it justifies certain actions taken if you realize that the parameters of an enclosed world are such that the resources are now limited, the boundaries are now limited. Yep. And so in controlling people around the world, I hate to suggest this, but is one that you have to take certain steps and measures to control humanity, for lack of a better.
Yeah. You're right. There are certain moves, and again, I see where you're going with that. It's not, condone isn't the right word, but there are certain, and I'm trying to come up with a term. Is necessary evil, the right term as well? Because if you're trying to control the population, there are certain steps that those groups, if you want to call it the Illuminati or the Bilderberg group or the Rothschilds, or just pick one, just throw a dart at a board and hit one. There were moves that they made that, even though I disagree with, I say, look, you got to come around, and this thing's got to end eventually. This secret has got to come out. At the same time, back in the 1950s or whatever, they decide to go down this path. I was thinking, you know what? If I was them, I don't know, and people are saying, no, don't say it. But I don't know if I would have done that much different at the time. But now I've come around and said, look, this is. We've gotten past that. We've gotten to the point now where the world needs help. Right. And again, I've said it last night. I've said it in several interviews. This is the one conspiracy where this actually would help people. It would help the world.
Right. And I'm coming from a perspective of being a parent. I have a son who's 11 years old.
Sure.
And as such, nobody really trains you to be a parent. You kind of just wing it. You can read all the books you want and have all the advice. But basically, you put boundaries for that child and say, okay, like, don't go too close to the water, you might fall in, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And if they don't listen, they could possibly get hurt.
Yep.
So people that have been running the show may have thought they were taking the right precautions in protecting the populace from themselves, right?
Yeah.
Also upsetting everything from religion, right? Really be considerate of how many people in the world, 7 billion.
7 billion, and of those, what, 5 billion are religious? Five or
Of all
six?
different sorts, of all
Yeah,
different,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. And so now you kind of see. I'm not a deconstructionalist. I don't know if that's even a real word,
Okay.
but much like yourself, I don't want to tell people what to think. I want to just be able to give them the platform to be able to ask the questions, to be able to express themselves,
Exactly.
and say. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Keep going.
And just basically just say, oh, okay, well, this is my viewpoint, and I want to hear like why it's that way. Especially if it's intelligible. Like the flat Earth. You're
Yeah.
asking really important questions, and you're not being like, okay, myopic, or you're not polarizing your position and saying this is the way it is. It's not this. You know what I'm saying? And so now people should be able to take from that and say, oh, wow, okay, there's an aspect here. I never thought of it that way. Oh, okay, this works in this model. And so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And so when you give people those boundaries of a flat Earth, and then you start to say, okay, not only is there a flat Earth, wait, it gets even crazier than that. You can start talking about the dome, so it's enclosed on top of it, or a force field,
Yeah.
or that it extends beyond the edge of the Earth. Like maybe we're just like a big flat island
Yep.
in an even bigger pool. It just starts to get where people just wouldn't be able to function. And it's not that I don't give our listeners or anybody else the not saying that they would just like curl up in a ball and just say, okay, I'm done. But it would just upset too many things too quickly. It would just, the status quo, everything in society would just shift too quickly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there'd be a lot of fear, I would think. I'd be a little nervous.
Initially, yeah. And again, which is why when I did Status Quo, which was Clue 5, and I touched on that. Yes, when I initially did it, I sincerely believed that the knee-jerk response from the public would be your standard 50s horror movie, hands in the air, screaming, running down the street. And I thought it was like, man, but the more I thought about it, yeah. So, and if I thought about it, because I tend to think on the same wavelengths as the authority. For some reason, I can put myself into their shoes fairly easily.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because I get a paycheck from them, but because I actually just put myself in people's shoes.
What do you know? G14? What level are you? I don't know.
Oh,
You're like Cosmic 22 or something?
Clearance levels just tick me off because the guy down the hall from me has a much higher clearance level, and he's a doof. I don't like him. Anyway, so what I was getting at was, if I had that reaction, then the authority would have that reaction. And I know exactly where they were coming from, which is what I stated in Clue 5, which was, look, if you give, it's not even, yeah, I initially said that, I turned it in sort of like a church versus state argument, which was, the church would all of a sudden get this huge influx of power and influence, and they might do bad things with it. But more than that, it would be, and I didn't touch on this in the clue, there would be a massive disruption in the fabric of our lives. Meaning, here's what happens.
Here we go. I'm rubbing my hands together because I can know it. Here we go.
Okay, so if everybody finds out that all of a sudden you get this big shift, we'll bypass the spirituality thing for a second here, and go into just what technologically, educationally, entire industries would have to shift. So, I mean, ignore the fact from the clues where I say, NASA would close and their subcontractors would close, and any astrophysics department, any astronomy, all your observatories, all that stuff would have to shut down, unfortunately, because they're pointless then. But think about the defense departments of the world and everything tied to that. Those industries would have to retool for peaceful intentions. And every subcontractor tied to the defense industry would have to retool, and militaries would have to, become, this sort of a peaceful entity. I mean, they really would have to become the UN. And all this would cause so much chaos, so much. I mean, everything would be disorganized for 10, 20, maybe 30 years. And so if you're the authority, you're all about, stability and structure and getting everything in a certain row, and everything's the way it is. And they like things the way they are. They make adjustments here and there, but it's such a huge disruption that if you're in a board meeting, with the whatever, 12, 20 other people that are in the room, and you're looking at it, and I hate to say this because it sounds trite. It's like they'd be looking at each other going, man, that would be such a hassle. it would be, yeah, we could come back from it. We could adjust to it, but it would be 30 years of adjustments, and it would just be just a pain in the ass. Can I say that on the air? I think I can.
Yeah, on the internet you can. I think it's
Okay.
like PG-13 out here.
Oh, okay. So it would just be this. It would be a disruption that would last such a long time that So their first knee-jerk reaction would be, "Oh no, we're not going to let spirituality evolve and religion take this huge foothold again." But the second part would be, it's like, man, how much work would we have to do? Think of the paperwork. Think of all the stuff that would. Anyway, so that was mine.
And I want to just say to that, I just want to answer the reason why I asked you such a hard question. And I'm glad you gave a long answer like that.
Sorry, I've been thinking about that one for a while.
No, because I opened with I threw you. I didn't throw you a softball. I said, "Why is it called the mother of all conspiracies?"
Yeah.
And for the past few weeks, we haven't even touched on this topic. I think some of the listeners are probably thinking, "What the heck is this?" We were talking about prepping and all that. Now they're talking about the world is flat. What?
We haven't done a cooking show yet.
No, but we are going to give great cooking tips in.
There you go.
No, the reason I did that is because I want people to understand how complex this topic is. It's not so much a fairy tale. It's not just some sci-fi, whether it's Tron or whether it's whatever simulation box you want to put it into or design. This is a very complex matter that geopolitics is involved and economics is involved and religion is involved and everything.
Yeah, and sorry if you don't mind me adding something when we're doing it. You're dead on there, and that is, it is so complex that there are certain clues I can't even get into because they're they kind of blur your vision when you're looking at them. And that is, people say this, initially you see it from the structure standpoint. If you can get your head around, oh yeah, it's a Truman Show. It's a giant structure that encompasses us, and there's all these systems inside it, and you can look at the mechanics of it. But then when you get past that, you got to do, it's like, okay, because some people, I'm not kidding you, I've gotten emails where they, it's like, oh, my girlfriend or my boyfriend said, the emails say, oh, well, what does it matter anyway? It's like, are you kidding me? Because you don't think it matters until it does. And that is, if you find out, if this thing actually comes to light, everything changes. And you may not care right away, but everyone around you will. And it'll affect your life in ways you had no idea that it could affect your life. Even though technically when you walk out your door, everything will look the same. You look up at the sky, blue sky, the nights, there'll be stars there. Nothing will change from a physical standpoint, but mentally, everything changes.
Absolutely.
So, anyway.
Absolutely. And if you're thinking about the future, and again, if you have children or going forward, you're thinking about the legacy of their future and where they're possibly now either trapped or going. Because when you talk about enclosed Earth, what I start to think in my mind, and then maybe this is these are my own fears, right? These are my own limitations of my mind. Mm-hmm. Is much like a hamster cage.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's a dome or there's a barrier or something like that, but one, who built it? Two, who put us in it? Yeah. Three, do we run and scurry and hide when they open the top of the cage to clean it out? That to me is the great culling, and maybe we can touch on that later.
Okay.
But here's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
We threw out a lot of complex things right away. I want to back it up, and I want to go show by show. I can name the show, and you can give a brief synopsis so we can get everybody familiar with how we got to this point, and then we can go into the deep questions. What do you think?
Yeah, you bet. Okay.
I
think we can do it and we still have time. You bet.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know where we're at in time. So I don't have the time.
We had 8 minutes till the first break, and we're good. Okay. No worries. So
Mark has this really cool sand timer that has like 22 minutes on it. Right? You flip it over.
I do. I got it from a witch, and the sand is actually black, and I think it's angel's tears. But anyway, that's
time stops until the last grain goes.
Exactly.
What's the reference?
Darn it! I don't know. What is it?
Crawl.
Oh wow! Really?
Remember that one?
Yeah, because I saw that. I'm old enough to have seen that 1985 in the theater, because it was one of those 1980s 3D movies.
Oh wow! Oh, that's right. It was cheesy. I remember that.
It was so cheesy, and that was the 5-bladed spinny thing that
the Grail Gizm, or what do they call it?
Yeah, that was good. It's good.
Anyway,
all right.
Okay.
Well, no, it's good. It's good. It's a good segue because the first clue is called
Empty Theater.
Empty Theater, and I know Rob Skiba, he said on air that that was my weakest one, and I probably shouldn't have put that first. But I I will say officially I disagree, because it was a precursor. It was like, look, I have to cast doubt on, the space program and NASA. And so for me, Empty Theater, and it is the only one, by the way, that I have yet to get. Everybody else has their comments and their little bit of a rebuttal, on the other clues. But Empty Theater absolutely is rock solid.
And by the way, let me just pause you there a moment for any new listeners. Just to follow where we're at with this, if you type Mark Sargent Flat Earth in YouTube, you'll see a list of these videos, and you'll see them laid out. This is part 1 we're speaking about.
Yeah, or you can even just Google it now, because just Google Flat Earth clues, and boom, it'll be there.
Flat Earth clues, there you go.
Yeah. Or because the website is up, closedworld.com. I'm proud to say that I actually built that one by myself, and it's turned out pretty well.
It looks great, by the way.
Thank
Melissa loves it.
Thank you. It was fun to do, and I had to take a class just to do it. It was like I had to rush through it. I had this crash course on JavaScript and HTML and CSS and all that stuff, and I was like going, I got to finish this thing, so it's my class project, but nobody knows that it's already done. Anyway, yeah, Empty Theater, the quick synopsis of it is it touches on the big question, which I put in some of the trailers, which is why have there never been any space movies in the history of Hollywood that have touched on the real life case where you land on the moon. And even though it's our greatest achievement in human civilization, there's lots of quotes out there by presidents and astronauts and stuff, but there's never been a movie on it. And I touched on it. I won't go into great detail, but you can look it up yourself. It's the moon missions officially ended in 1972. The only movies that even remotely touched on the space program from a real standpoint, not a futuristic or a fantasy based.
I got my hand raised. I know the answer, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. The first one was 1983, The Right Stuff, and then followed in 1995, Apollo 13, and those were the only 2 movies, and that was it. No movies. Tell me how Hollywood, who has made as many movies as they have over the years, has never ever made a movie about the moon, and it's just staggering to me.
And you're absolutely right. You would think there's so much you can write there, especially the guys that went there 6 times. It wasn't just once.
Yeah. They flew 6 and landed 5. The 6, the Apollo 13 was the 6th, but it didn't land. But officially, they, all of them went to the moon and back, and nobody died.
And I have to admit something on the air, and I'm embarrassed to even admit this, but much like many other people, I'm sure, I didn't know we went to the moon that many times. I always thought it was like they went once, and then every time after that, it was like, well, we did it once.
No, don't be embarrassed. There's a lot of people that don't know.
They never made a big,
No, that was part of it. It's like, oh yeah, we went 6 times. It's no big deal. Nothing to see here. It's that standard. Nothing to see here. Move along. That was the whole goal. And that was by 1972, the ratings were dropping. It was like, oh, it's no big deal. But you would think it would have evolved into, moon base or multi-company or multi-country moon base or company. Private sector would have gotten in. I mean, you're telling me that with all the money some of these private companies have, they wouldn't want to put a big banner or a beacon on the moon?
And you know what I always say, I always make this reference to you when we get, and I don't want to get off topic from the flat earth, but this directly ties into it for me, because you're changing the design of the earth relative to the planets. You're changing the limitations of possibly how far we can go into space. But anyway, I always bring up Neil Armstrong. And if you're the first guy to land on the moon, I would think they would have you at every single mall in America to have kids sitting on your lap or at your feet like Mr. Rogers.
Oh, absolutely.
Reading stories to and telling these fantastic, like, I went to the moon and this is what I saw, and the kids would be all excited. Like, here's a hero. He could have been like a cowboy or a John Wayne or anybody that kids believed in at that time.
Yeah.
But they never did.
Yeah, an excellent point. And look at the heroes before him. Charles Lindbergh, or just war heroes. Teddy Roosevelt, who just did the Spanish-American War, became president. Charles Lindbergh, who just flew across the Atlantic, and he was a freaking hero for life until he renounced his United States citizenship for a whole nother thing. Look up that conspiracy, people, if you get the chance. Admiral Byrd. He did the North Pole and the South Pole, and he was doing television and speaking engagements pretty much nonstop. Whenever he wasn't on the ice, he was on TV or doing a book thing. He was doing lectures constantly, but
Right.
it's the exact opposite with Neil Armstrong.
I get to see Neil Armstrong going into a diner, by the way, or a restaurant, and like, who are you? I'm Neil Armstrong. Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah, more coffee, hun. Like really? Like what did you do that was popular?
Yeah, exactly. And all of them really became recluses. A lot of them turned to the bottle, and and Neil was notorious for not talking to people. And then he gives that cryptic speech at that NASA thing with Bill Clinton, in the background, where he look that up if anyone gets the chance, where he said, "You must reveal one of truth's hidden protective layers." I mean, that didn't, mean that much. I mean, that was a weird speech as it was, but once I got into the enclosed world thing, that got way weirder. I mean, but yeah, you're dead on. There was no reason. Again, the astronauts, for those of you who have never looked it up, absolutely look into the international press conference after those guys first got back from the moon. They should have been on cloud 9, and they looked like someone had kicked their dog. It was like they're just sitting there, just so depressed. No one's cracking a smile. No one's doing anything, and it was like they were protecting Neil. On top.
And what would be funny in a sad way if we actually shoot a rocket up there towards the moon for real this time, and basically it's like Lilu trying to stand up in a reconstruction chamber.
Yeah, I get that Fifth Element. That one was a softball. Absolutely.
No, but what happens when you hit a ceiling? You hit a dome. You hit a boom. Because they use the Van Allen belt as the excuse, which I'm not saying it doesn't exist.
Oh, I am. I'm absolutely saying it doesn't exist. It was announced by a NASA guy, so why would it exist?
Exactly. All right, with that, we'll be back in a moment.
.org.
You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Down the rabbit hole with Popeye. Tuesday through Friday.
Truth Frequency Radio.
And we're back. I don't know where we are anymore, Mark. Where are we?
Well, we've moved from the bunker to the drone tactical room.
I meant our location. Are we on Earth anymore? What are we calling this anymore?
Oh, right. Is it officially? Well, no, it's still officially Earth, technically. Even though it's enclosed, I think you can still keep the name.
Okay.
For now, until somebody comes up with something better. But it's not going to be a globe anymore. That's for sure.
I'm okay with that.
Oh, good.
We left off. We were talking about Empty Theater, the first of the series of clips.
Yep.
And just real quick, I was thinking about other movies I've seen where we've been on the moon, but we really didn't explore it. And I was thinking the first thing I thought it was Capricorn 1.
That one, no. Capricorn 1 was the fake Mars mission movie.
Okay.
And in fact, there's some trivia behind that, and I know I've mentioned other things, but I might as well mention it here. The Capricorn 1 was done. Most people don't know it was an independent film for that year. I think it was 1979, and not only was it was the highest grossing independent film for that year, and
that nobody heard of.
That nobody had heard of. Well, no, I mean, it made some money. It was a decent. I enjoyed watching it, okay. but I enjoyed watching it for a completely different reason. And the guy that made it was a CBS studio producer. He had actually run several television studios, and he was old enough, because it was less than 10 years after the last Apollo mission. He had what he had done was he had helped rebroadcast the original Apollo missions. And as you know, for those of you who haven't checked, those were second and third generation recordings. And so he was so upset about the production value of the actual Apollo missions. He was like, saying, I could make something better than this. And then all of a sudden that evolved into, I'm sure it evolved initially into a moon movie, and then he turned it into a Mars movie. But the entire movie was basically how you would fake a space program to Mars. And it was very realistic and very well done. And, it showed all the tricks, the slow motion stuff and the delay in broadcasting the audio and the color palettes. It was brilliant.
And isn't there a scene, maybe this is where I got the confusion on my end. Wasn't there a scene where they show the actual landing module just like they'd landed on the moon? It was the same.
Yeah. They used the exact same module that they did from the moon thing. Absolutely.
I mean, I wouldn't even go to the moon in that thing.
I know they're let
alone Mars.
Yeah, the construct. Yeah, I know. Yeah, use the same capsule to go to Mars. That makes perfect sense. Even though the journey is way longer. Absolutely, it was an interesting flick, but I dug it, and that's why I reference it in not only the clues, but every chance I can. Check it out. If you guys download it, rip it, find the DVD in a bargain bin somewhere. It's one of O.J. Simpson's serious roles, by the way.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
O.J. Simpson was in that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there anything you want to add to Empty Theater? Because this is really the start of it, and I'll warn everybody right now.
What?
How I found you, because I don't know if we really discussed how we met each other, but I followed a link somewhere on one of the conspiracy forums that talked about a flat Earth.
Yeah.
And it was to your videos.
Yeah.
And after I watched the first one, I was hooked. How long is the first?
10 minutes? 12 minutes?
That's all it took. It was like that first hit, and then I was addicted. And
nice.
Now Mark's my drug dealer. My drug of choice is truth. Now,
hey, and the truth doesn't cost anything. And,
at first.
Then
it costs your jobs, your relationships.
Yeah, as soon as you start talking to people about the truth, then it'll cost you.
Yeah, you need an intervention. They got people coming over my house with globes, spinning them and history books.
Nice.
That would be actually a funny video. Stage an intervention for somebody who believes in a flat Earth.
I get nervous every time somebody mentions, like, oh yeah, I went to a dinner party, with my family and opened up with flat Earth stuff, which is why I did that whole thing on Flat Club, and that is, look, you just cannot. I understand the term, and I called it Flat Earth Clues, and I'm sticking by that because it's a great icebreaker, but there's a reason why I called the website enclosedworld.com. I know somebody immediately, took Flat Earth clues.com, because I said nobody's taken it. Somebody took it like immediately, and the Facebook page and all that. But I was never going to take it back. So if you're thinking I'm going to buy it off you, I'm not, because I was always going to go with something enclosed, either enclosed world, enclosed worlds, or something to that effect. So.
And by the way, if people have been listening these past couple weeks, I'm a bit of a jokester, but in all honesty, for those of us that are conspiracy folk, and we search for the truth, we've been laughed at and mocked and so many other things so many times, and yet been proven correct, been proven right.
Yeah.
After a period of time. So I'm on your side. Everybody listening out there, I laugh because just laugh at them. Laugh at everybody who laughs at us and makes fun, and then all of a sudden the truth comes out. I've had people come back to me with certain things. I can't give you a specific right now, but let's say 15 years out, and say, I remember when you first told me about this, I thought you were crazy, and then, I don't know, I just started researching, and I didn't want to admit it, but I now believe this way. What else do you know? Yeah. And they'll kind of like ask you on an aside. Even on Facebook, a lot of people have friends and family, they're conservative or whatever.
Yeah.
So you need an outlet for that. But we'll be vindicated time and again.
Yeah, and I have little doubt. There's always some doubt, but I have little doubt that this thing is going to, it's going to prove to be something. At the end, I think it's going to be something really cool and awesome.
Okay. Well, that's it. Let me move on to number 2, Bird Wall.
Bird Wall, my point of no return. In my opinion, probably the most interesting of the clues, because I stumbled upon it on accident A quick synopsis is the greatest living explorer, well, the greatest explorer of all time, in my opinion, was Richard Byrd. He did the North Pole in 1926 in a rickety plane. I mean, think about it. Planes were only around, very horrible. The planes were not good in 1926.
They just barely had heat in them, I think.
Yeah.
And you had manual oxygen.
Oh yeah,
right?
well, you didn't. Yeah, they were horrible. They were awful. And from that mission, from that 1926 mission, was formed the Hollow Earth myth, legend, whatever you want to call it. If anyone wants to look it up, Admiral Byrd, Hollow Earth, fantastic story. And I buy it. And after that, he went down from 1928 to 1956, almost 30 years. His focus completely shifted down to Antarctica. And he spent his entire rest of his life down there, died in 1957. But before that, his last mission was 1955, 1956 Operation Deep Freeze, where he, in my opinion, found something. And what I think that something was literally the edge of the world. And when that happened, everything changed. All the governments changed. All the politics changed. And from a secret society point of view, some really, really broad strokes were made on their part, and to the point where in 1959, Antarctica was sealed off, not just militarily, but from a corporate standpoint, to where all corporations, no corporation in the world is allowed to do business on Antarctica in any medium. So whether you're a natural gas company, an oil company, a mineral company, anything that has to do with resources, you cannot go down there. You cannot petition it. It is not even up for debate until the year 2041. And by the time I got through that clue, I was like going, whew, if there's this thing's getting kind of spooky. And at that point, I was like, all right, I'm in. I'm just going to keep doing clues until somebody stops me.
Yeah, that's pretty compelling. And I was going to ask you, I heard you mention that on George Norton in a few other interviews.
Mm-hmm.
Who makes that determination? Who kind of says, it's not like the DMV where they revoke your license. Like, who's the world body or organization that makes that determination?
Well, that's just it. It was weird because the 10 nations that initially formed it, and they were all on the ice at the same time. But again, that's the part. That's the part that bugs me. It's like you had, because this was 1956, right? And
It sounds like the end of a bad Justice League episode, by the way, where they're all like, they defeated the bad guy, they're all standing there, and now what? Okay, well, we're going to court, go past this point now. Like, what do you mean they all just met there? That's kind of an obscure place to me.
Well, yeah, they were all down there doing supposedly scientific research. You had Great Britain that was rebuilding from World War II. You had Russia that was rebuilding from World War II, and Russia, remember, they got hammered during World War II. That was only 10 years later. They needed as many resources as they get. Plus, they're used to cold weather environments. Those guys would have absolutely, been perfect for that. You had Argentina, New Zealand, Australia, Chile. They were all down there. And then whatever happened, again, I envision, Byrd went out, because he flew his own planes, probably had his plane and a spotter plane and a couple others. And when they found out, I think they let the Russians in on it and said, because they needed the Russian support at that point. They said, okay, look, we can't do this. We can't hide the world by ourselves. We're going to need help on the other side of the world. And at that point, I believe the Cold War really was ramped up but it was all fiction. It was like, okay, let's give us a reason to ramp up the rocket program. Let's give us a reason to create a space race. Let's create this rivalry, this heated, brother, angry brothers at each other, sort of like a Appalachian feud,
right,
type thing where there's this hostility between us. But that's why they called it the Cold War. It was below the surface, but I don't believe it was true at all. I believe that Russia was absolutely in on it with America. And they are our secret brothers and have been the entire time. I mean, yeah, there are troops, we train our troops. Oh, you got to hate the Russians, better dead than red and all that crap. But I think at the highest levels, they have been our allies and they've had our backs. We've had each other's backs since the beginning. So,
and and we were talking about that earlier at the start of the show about, again, not condoning the actions, but understanding the actions of certain groups around the world. And I'm thinking, okay, well, if we find we're in an enclosed world, we'll revisit this for a moment. Yeah. Let's say your greatest enemy, whether it's a Cold War, Russia, whoever, and you find and say, look, come down here. We got to show you something. Why can't you just tell us over the phone? No, trust me. You got to come see this. And they get down there, and it's kind of like grabbing somebody by the back of the neck and saying, look, making them look.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's like the end of the 13th floor or something like that, where like there's nothing there. It just kind of digitizes. Or there's a wall,
where they drove to the end of the world.
Yeah, and it's like, do you see what the problem is here? And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, okay, I get it now. So then you kind of turn to each other and say, okay, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Right? You have to agree on it at that point.
Yeah.
Or there's something more nefarious than that.
There is my imagination, and I consider my imagination pretty good. I couldn't think of it.
Go ahead. No, you go first.
If it is something bigger than this, I can't literally get my head around it because it's everything screams structure. Everything that I looked at, every bit of research that I did screams structure, and that you're trying to hide structure, and that's where I ended up.
Right, and I think for some, I know in my imagination, I've created this structure to be kind of invisible, like an invisible barrier, almost like you want to throw something at it so you can find the most fabulous object in the universe.
Yeah,
kind of break through that glass. That's from Time Bandits, by the way.
Yeah, 1981.
81, you're right.
81, yeah.
But no, I'm thinking, okay, we've seen so many movies and the way technology went with all the sci-fi.
Yeah.
And it's funny how the aliens are always some kind of bad guy or they're going to visit us and they're going to destroy us, or they're the aggressors, whether it's Alien or Predator, any of these movies. And I'm thinking to myself, first off, who would travel all the way through space just to start a fight?
Yep.
Right. Yep. And if you could dominate the planet with your technology, if you can make it here, why would you just go through all these hidden, hide in the dark kind of things and abduct people? Yeah. But if they knew that these other entities, one, maybe possibly put us here, two, could be at the fringes and operate from those locations, three, we can go to subterrestrial possibility later on.
Yeah.
It changes, again, everything, your perception on why are we here, how do you operate, and who's the real aggressor.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, people like Admiral Byrd, when I saw that interview, I think you put the full 18-minute interview.
Yeah, and I like to correct the pronunciation because I've had several emails. It is not Longines chronoscope. It is pronounced Longines, like long denim jeans. Longines chronoscope.
I was going to say these people back then in the the 50s, the 40s, whenever, men of integrity, men who stood by their words. They didn't just go on TV to make jokes of everything like our
No,
entertainment.
it was very serious back then.
Yeah, they worked hard at what they did, and why would they go out and lie about this stuff?
Oh, you mean you're talking to the point where was Admiral Byrd, in on it, and was he kind of doing the shill thing? And you're right. No, I do not believe Admiral Byrd was a shill in any capacity, mostly because he broke the rules of being a disinfo agent, and that was if he was a shill, and that was the last thing you'd want to do if you want to hide. First of all, in 1954, I don't believe they'd even found it yet. So when he comes on television on CBS in 1954 and says, oh, by the way, this place is made out of money. There's coal for the entire world. There's oil. There's minerals. There's uranium, and it's completely untouched. And you don't have to worry about disturbing everything because it's just rock and snow. At that point, you're hyping up the corporations. If you don't want attention put on that continent, that's the last thing you would do is go back there because no one wants to go there anyway. And all of a sudden you're getting all the, you could almost hear the corporations salivating from that little speech he did. And, when he was and then all of a sudden, so he goes from that and then he dies in 1957. And then that topic isn't on the radar ever again. Nobody talks about Antarctica ever. In 1959, they just quietly, everybody, those 10 original nations put their stamp on it, and that was it.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much to be. People just have to go out and watch these videos because by the time you're into number 2, you're just gonna go 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think the first time I started watching, I was like, oh, I gotta go to bed. It's about 1:30. Next thing I know, my girl Melissa's like, it's 3:30. What are you doing?
And it's funny that you mentioned that because I've had a bunch of people say that to me. It's like, they'll put it on and it's because it's a narrative. It's just me, rattling off a script, and you don't even have to watch the slides if you don't want. I mean, the slides are pretty good, but you don't even have to. I'm giving you the blow by blow. So lots of people have said, "Oh yeah, I just plug it in and go to sleep, and listen to it as I'm going to sleep." It's like, wow, that's amazing. So
I thought they were more entertaining than that. I wouldn't say they put you to sleep. But.
no, but
No, I'm just
you know what? Thanks, man. Thanks. No, but they no, but I thought it was a fluke initially when the first couple of people told me that, but it was mostly it's like they kind of were asleep, but they weren't really. They said they got through the clues, but I was sort of kind of hypnotizing them while they were asleep. He was going, "That's fantastic," because that's an entirely separate NSA course you have to go through, and I hadn't finished it, so.
And by the way, you have a great delivery the way you visit this topic, and address each part of it, and it's like, wow, this is compelling. Like I want to listen. Like I don't know if I believe this, but man, I got to figure out where this is going. Like this is remarkable.
By the way, I got to give credit to Matt Boylan because he was the only one to mention to me, and when we spoke, he goes, "So, were you deliberately trying to imitate Rod Serling when you were doing your narrative?" And he wasn't kidding. He was not messing with me. And I go, "Wow, no, I wasn't." But now I kind of hear it. It was
Now that you mention it, yeah.
The whole.
And thank you for turning me on to that too, because of course, with this topic, you start to explore other. Does that, is it just me now? Like, am I stuck with it? I felt like it was like The Ring, like you passed on the knowledge and you want to get rid of it. And so I had to share it with somebody else. But no, I went and found Matt Boylan and others that you recommended. I was like, wow, this is really fascinating.
Yeah.
So thank you for opening my eyes to this.
Oh, no, I was happy to do it. And I still, I'm going to reference, that one wonderful thing that Matt's girlfriend did years ago. Oh, not that many years ago, where he was on the couch, just rattled off the story. And it's like, that story still gives me chills. And I love referencing it to people.
That's the kind of stuff that most of us don't enjoy until like we're around a campfire with somebody or people are, buzzed at the end of the night and they start telling you things that they shouldn't.
Well, yeah. And that is the crux of his story. That's why I believed it. Because when he was talking about when he was with NASA, at that NASA party and the power goes out, and I've been at these parties, this type of, because I was up in the Northwest. And yeah, if the power goes out, the party doesn't necessarily end. It just gets way, way more intimate, and if you've got wine and candles, it's confession time. Everybody just sits down. It's like, what's the weirdest thing you ever did? And so I killed a man just to watch him die. That sort of stuff. And Matt was like, the NASA guys were like draw the world on the ground and say, oh yeah, by the way, it's flat. And it's like, oh my God. If I was 25 and I was told this, I don't even know if I'd be speaking to you now. I'd probably be curled up somewhere in a rubber room. I don't know if I could have handled it.
Now, real quick. Now, I don't know what time we're at. If you have the timer, go into number 3?
6 minutes.
All right, let's get into number 3.
Okay,
we're not going to make this show. Map makers.
We can rip through 6 really. Okay. Map makers was the synopsis was I was digging into the actual maps of the enclosed world flat Earth thing, and I noticed something very, very interesting, and that was the U.S. government was using a map they've got in their catalog called the azimuthal equidistant map, which was designed 1,000 years ago. The layout for it by a Persian scientist named Al-Biruni, who was coincidentally tied to the moon because NASA named a moon crater after this Persian scientist from 1,000 years ago. It's also the same map used by the UN flag. It's identical to the UN flag that was finalized in 1946, which is interesting. Somebody pointed out to me in an email that flag was finalized in 1946, even though nobody freaked out about Antarctica until 1955. Kind of like they knew in advance that it was coming. It was just a matter of time. But it is also the same exact map as the Flat Earth Society. Although, when you put these two maps side by side, you can look at anybody and they'll say, oh, well, the Flat Earth map is obviously crazy because they think it's literal, whereas the United States government, the USGS and the UN flag, they just say it's a representation, a different perspective of the continents. And when you look at all of them and you start looking at this stuff, it's that head scratching, things that make you go, type thing, because it's all there for you. This is not secret information. I found all this stuff on Wiki, just, doing different Wiki links. And, it was fascinating to me. So it was a fairly short clue, but it really drove home, the hide it right in plain sight, right in your face type of thing.
And speaking of maps, we've had many conversations off the air, going way out on ideas.
Yeah, we have.
No, but it's been fun.
Yeah.
Exploring the questions, the what ifs. I think I said to you, if you go back 2,000 years ago, the guys that did astronomy, early astronomy and cartography and all cartography, right, map making.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and all this, they were looking at the stars. They were pretty exacting in their calculations, and yet a lot of their stuff still applies today, right?
Yeah.
So now, how do you take somebody who thinks and believes they live on a flat Earth, who maps the stars, and then put that around the wrapper of a globe, and have it fit the same calculation?
How
does it still apply?
How does it still apply? And if it does still apply, which it does, then which one is right? Because if they both work, then what's the difference? The only difference is that somebody called it a different shape, and adjusted the shape, but the science behind it still works. So it's almost like, okay, it's just semantics, really. One place, okay, it works in a flat Earth and it also works in a globe. Well, how can it work in both if they're both very, very completely different? The universe changes if it's a globe, and you're right. Yeah, it's a weird little thing that most people don't talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to let's get through these real quick, because people can really, again, you have to go watch these and then come back to this show next week.
We got 3 minutes. I can rip through Shell Beach.
Do Shell Beach, yeah.
Shell Beach. Shell Beach is an inside joke for those and really for us movie buffs. What it is, Shell Beach was based off of a 1998 movie called Dark City, where a group of higher advanced technology aliens took humans and created a city in space that was flat, that was enclosed by a force field, and altered their memory so that they never realized that they were in a circular, enclosed flat world. They never knew there was a way out. But Shell Beach was this inside joke in the movie where everyone remembers Shell Beach. Everyone has been there, but technically it was just a memory that was implanted, and there was no way to get to Shell Beach. It didn't exist in real life. And so it's fascinating. But the rest of the clue really talks on the big thing was the Truman Show. And that was from a movie predictive programming, if you want to call it, standpoint. The Truman Show was fascinating. Most people remember it was also a 1998 movie about a man born into, on Earth, born into a Hollywood movie set that was flat, that was an enclosed system about 20 miles wide. And the whole movie was about him discovering that he was in this and how his life changed. As he was finding out, he went through all the stages, of denial and this big mystery and anger and everything. But in the end, he got out. And that was the thing. It was like once he knew where he was, eventually his instincts took over, and he only hesitated for a second, and he left. And that to me was absolutely fascinating and very telling, in my opinion. If you want to hide something in plain sight, that's exactly what a lot of people, would immediately try to find the outside of it.
Yeah, and going back to Shell Beach and Dark City, I thought it was interesting how, just like rats in a science experiment, they started changing the map of the maze, so to speak, and they would change a wall or change a building.
Yeah.
And so then they wanted to see if they could adapt, overcome, but they also changed the stimulus of their life.
Yeah.
To then make them go in different directions. So that was,
Yeah. And the cop in that, if you get a chance, watch Dark City and watch the character that plays the cop, where he talks about, look, he realized, he goes, look, no one's getting out. He's going, it's all a big joke. You think you know where you're going, but you don't, and he laughed, and it's a great movie, really.
And if you're new again to this program, you think you know where you're going, but you don't know where we're going next. So after this break, I think we're going to go into another weird direction, but on a flat Earth.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back.
You must unite what has been set asunder.
We are TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
Wild and what it seems. Give me the ring. Kill the king when love is the law. I'm a real turn around. Give me the ring. Forgetting dreams, child, and do you.
Welcome back, everybody. We're in a strange world. We're living in a strange world. Now we're in a Strange World radio program. And we're eating Strange World food. I could go on forever with this. We really are.
Don't do it.
No.
Yeah, but yeah, we are in a strange world. Absolutely.
We're back. Where did we leave off? We left off with Shell Beach.
Yeah. Pretty much wrapping up the Shell Beach.
Yeah. And again, watch that one. And then if you haven't seen Dark City, that's definitely a must. And there's another one like Dark City. The Signal?
The Signal. Yeah. And Signal was a movie, was 2014, just last year.
Mm-hmm.
And that started out slow, but you want to have some fun. I mean, that, for me, I love watching the last 20 minutes of that movie. I thought, they saved apparently all the production money for that because that's where they spent it. And
I had no clue where that movie was going. You made me watch it. You said, well, you didn't make me. You said, I suggest you watch it.
Yeah. But at the end, that was the big payoff. And that was the kids were taken, they were abducted. And I know I'm giving a spoiler here.
No. Oh, okay. Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. If you don't want to, you want to know what the signal ends. But they end up putting them in an enclosed system that was, 20, 30 miles wide. That was, basically a simulation of the American Southwest. And I
didn't see that coming, by the way. I really thought they were out like in Area 51 or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I think everybody did. And that's when they got to the end. It's like, oh wow! So now, I put a couple of those shots. I clipped them and put them on my website, so people can see those last couple frames. But it's kind of fun. But yeah, that was pretty much Shell Beach.
Okay, and that kind of leads into what we all believe, the status quo, number 5.
Yeah. Status quo was the deal with status quo was I was looking for initially the why, because people say, why would you hide this? And I'm not talking about why would the creator hide this? Why would the authority? Why would, the American government, the Russian government, the Illuminati, the Bilderberg, whoever you want to pick, why would they hide it? And that was what we've kind of previously discussed, which was, it was too disruptive. And there was a big chance that if you come from a science and state program and you're big into structure, the last thing you want to do, and I'm not picking on religion at all, I'm totally religion neutral when it comes to this part, is the last thing they'd want to do is give the power back to the church. And so they decide not to. And, so not only was it disruptive, they were saving their jobs. It's like, look, if you work for a science foundation and you find the wall, which is basically the handprint of God, you're basically going to fire yourself, your whole staff, the school that you went to. Everybody's going to have to shut down because, you were being honest. And so, the temptation, men like holding on to power. And they decided in 1956 to hide it. So
I don't know what to say to that because
you agree? You don't agree?
No, I agree. I just I don't know. I'm at a dead end on this one. I'll tell you later. I want to revisit this one.
Okay, you don't want to tell me on air?
Yeah, no, because other things that have come up since then.
Yeah.
You know
no, it's good. We actually touched on this one earlier when we were discussing the why. That was one of your deeper questions.
Yeah.
Which was what happens when this goes down. But then again, I came around, and by the time we get to the end, I came around. And it's like, look, that's when I put my push towards the authority and say, look, you could save this world. This is the only thing I think you could do to save this world. But we'll get to that. So,
in my rose-colored glasses world, I would like to think that somebody's going to step up to the podium, not necessarily Obama, or whoever for the Americans, but somebody who kind of speaks on behalf of the world. And we don't have that. Now, I'm not talking about I want a new world order, one world order with one leader. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I would just like to see somebody just come forward and say, look, this is what has been worked on. This is what we know. This is the truth. This is how we're going to help you understand it better.
Yeah,
and then really start rolling it out and saying you all have a stake in this. Like, this is where we're going.
Yeah,
and we don't seem to have that.
No,
not yet.
No, not yet. But you never know. Never know.
Yeah.
So
maybe exploring this is going to open up other doors.
Maybe.
Which let's lead to number 6, depth perception.
Depth perception. That was a really quick one that I did. In fact, I don't even know if it's 7 minutes long. But I had to address it because it went into something that I was working on, because I had enough people by the time I had gotten to like number, because I was releasing these one every day. It's, Empty Theater, and then the next day was Birdwall. Literally, the next day was Mapmakers. But by the time I got depth perception, I was getting those questions like it's like, how thick is this thing? Can you define? Can you kind of break down the mechanics of it? And that's when I kind of got into, all right, let's look at what we have so far. I said, look, you've got a top-down, enclosed Truman Show type system, thousands of miles wide. Continents grouped at the center inside a massive body of water, salt water, by the way, because if you have salt water instead of fresh water, it limits travel, overseas travel, especially with lesser technology. It really, really limits them. And people, if you haven't figured that out yet, it's like, look, if you could drink what you can sail across, your long expedition missions really come down to a food issue. It never comes down to water, because they had to take water
Good
with
point. Good, excellent point.
them. Thank you. And that's only a 3% salt solution, which is even weirder. It's a great design. And then you increase the cold at the outer edge to the point where salt water freezes at about 15 degrees. And then you make a really uninhabitable land, which is Antarctica, with no plant life, no animal life, unless you count penguins, and I don't. No offense to the penguins, but you're not going to survive on them for food, I don't think. No trees of any kind. It's barren, so you've got a real problem there. And then from the upper structure, you have decreasing oxygen levels to the point where when you get up at even as little as 15,000 feet, you've got severe altitude sickness for a bunch of people. And people don't understand. It's like the band that we live on is wafer thin. We live 95% of the population lives in an area that is only, is less than 5,000 feet high. We live in a very, very thin band of life where we are. And then I covered I want to have fun with it. So I covered the molten rock systems, because people said, what about volcanoes? And I said, they said, wouldn't volcanoes be a natural process? I said, well, you could do a natural process, but why? Something this big, you're not going to leave anything to chance. You are not going to let potential disaster happen with a natural process like molten rock. You'd use giant blast furnaces that could pump, molten rock through certain areas, and volcanoes would be, pretty much at your control, more or less. And that's really what depth perception was. It started out as how thick would the enclosed system have to be, which in my opinion, since we can't drill down past 8 miles, and I know somebody emailed me recently, says, well, maybe you can go to 12. I'm going, fine, 8, 12, it makes no difference, because the scientists say, yeah, we know exactly every band of everything for the 8,000 mile stretch through the Earth. And even though they've only drilled down less than 10 miles. So by the time I got to the end, it was like I was building the structure even more for myself, building everything out, and all the design features worked.
That's really incredible. Now as you're speaking, I'm thinking, my mind is racing again. That's what you do every time you start talking.
Sorry.
No, you bring up a thousand other questions. Like, what I was just thinking is, when you talk about volcanoes and Antarctica and all that, to us, these are big things, like big landforms and distances, and the Earth is huge.
Yeah.
But if you think about, mankind is always making things smaller, miniaturization. I can't even say that word. Miniaturization.
Yeah.
Of things into nano now. Right now we're working with nano.
Yeah.
And if you look at there's a YouTube video that shows the size of our sun relative to, again, I'm just using this for this purpose, to the planets, and then they say there's other suns that are larger. What if everything in the universe is scaled in a way that, again, we have no understanding of, meaning that there could be things that are 1,000 times bigger than us, right? Like macrocosms and microcosms.
Yeah.
So whoever or whatever created this Earth, this flat Earth, it could just be a miniaturization, a simulation.
Absolutely, man. And Steven Spielberg, kind of toyed with that idea with, some of his Men in Black little montage things at the end. But you're absolutely right. People say, well, we couldn't have an enclosed world because it's so big, but that's just because we see it as big. it may be very, very small to them. We could be literally an object on a workshop desk. We don't know. From our perspective, yes, it looks very, very big, but lots of science fiction movies have touched on that, and it's all about perspective. So, yeah, I would be freaked out too if the lid does come off this thing one day and we just see a giant eyeball. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would freak me out. Which is why I think I saved. I'll use in the next clue the Life Force movie poster from 1980. Oh, geez, five or six, where it's this giant eyeball staring at the top of Earth, which I thought was brilliant. Mm-hmm. But yeah, absolutely could be.
And much like, and I'll use these two analogies, much like when you watch a National Geographic documentary on like ants or any insect you want to pick.
Yeah.
When you're looking at them in their environment, it just looks like this cool little, okay, that's their little environment. There's their anthill, and this is how they live underground, and the cameras cover them. Yeah. So it's all scaled and relative to them. But if the guy interacts with them, the researcher, whatever you want to call him out there, the photographer, the videographer, if he sticks his head in the shot, and now you see his face behind the ant, you see how big he is relative.
Oh yeah, he looks like a demigod. Absolutely,
right, ginormous.
Yeah,
and so right then and there, and if you go smaller than the ant, if you say here's an ant running into an aphid, you know what I'm saying, you can go all the way down the line. So yeah, step it up bigger. Like, what if this enclosed world, somebody, again, depth perception, somebody lifts the lid one day and there's a big eyeball floating up there, and what do hamsters do in a cage? They know you.
Yeah.
You feed them, you clean them, you take care of them, but yet they still scurry underneath the wood chips or whatever's in their cage.
Yeah. I would hope, I don't want to come off as this big threatening sci-fi Twilight Zone episode thing, but of course my wish is that it's, more, it's bigger out there, but everybody's in perspective. That there won't be a race of 500-foot giants come in and just start tromping all over the place and start moving mountains around. I would hate to see that, but yeah.
And in another way, if I can add to that, we all played, I think most of us all played Zelda.
Okay.
At one time or another.
Yeah.
And when you look at Zelda, it's a top-down format of a person who's basically inside a circle.
Yeah.
Like the world is moving around them. So I tell people, what if you're not really moving through a linear plane, but everything is actually moving around you? You think you're being locomotion, like you're moving, but you're really in the center of the screen at all times.
Yeah. 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 And from a gaming standpoint, again, I came from the gaming world, and people don't understand. It's like, yeah, you've got the world around you, but even in the most immersive games, but one, it's always flat. It's always enclosed on all sides, for various reasons. From a design standpoint, you can't let the player get past a certain point because it breaks the rules. It's like, because you don't account for that. Sooner or later, you have to build in a border.
Right.
But you don't want them to think there's a border. You give the illusion that it goes on forever, but the truth is eventually you walk up to a point and all of a sudden, for no apparent reason, you can't go any further. And that's even in the best games today.
And by the way, I go into video games. We've never touched on video games. We have to talk after this show.
Yeah.
I hate scripted games where the guy can do these incredible things, jump off a building, climb this, climb that, and then he can't move because he runs into a bucket because they didn't write the script for kicking the bucket.
Yep.
But the only reason I bring these topics up is because we live in a technological world. We've based our society around sci-fi movies and what ifs, everything from the Matrix to the holodeck on, Star Trek. Anything's possible. As we're discovering.
Yeah. And again, and that's the part where it's starting to blur now. And again, maybe why we're talking about this now is we've gotten to a point technologically where, everything is possible. So every other concept should also be possible, and including this. Absolutely.
And I think, and that's the thing, when they say an idea whose time has come, I think you didn't really create the wheel here, but you really tap this subject at the right time, because now they're talking about they want to go to Mars.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, wow, how are they going to pull this one off?
Yeah, no. There's no way. There's you can't. And you and I have talked about it. You can't fake something like that now. It's too far gone. You can't even fake a local op nowadays.
Right.
You're gonna fake something like that. That's huge. You can talk about it all you want, but no, never gonna happen.
But I think you bringing up the flat Earth theory now,
Mhm.
or actually now the evidence that we're going to explore and look for,
Yeah.
is similar to, like, remember those magic eye posters that everybody used to go cross-eyed looking at?
Yeah.
They were the rage for a couple of years.
Yeah.
You couldn't make that without computers that could do stereoscopic imaging.
Yeah.
No artist could paint that.
No.
You see what I'm saying? So without the invention of the computer, you couldn't make that. So now, without the perception of the public and where we are now technologically, and now the memes are set out there, we couldn't explore this realistically.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
thank you for taking us to the next generation or wherever the hell we're going.
Oh God.
Anyway,
Okay.
all right. I
Thank
went
you.
long-winded on that one, and
That's
that'll
right.
tie into the long haul.
Nice, good segue there. You should do local news. The long haul. That was a fun one, and that was really kind of a continuation of something that a German guy I had seen on YouTube, where he had said. Again, I couldn't understand initially what his text, but the visual images said, look, there's something wrong when you try to book flights in the Southern Hemisphere. And by that, I mean anything from South America to anything like in Australia. He goes, they're the connections. You always get connections, and they always go all over the place, and they take way too long. And they go in places you'd never, ever want to go. And I didn't believe it. I was like going, I was going with this. I was going, okay, I gotta touch on this one, as lightly as I can. But the more I dug into it, the more it was true. And to the point where I was watching stuff, I was like, there's no reason why you would take a flight from like Sydney, Australia to like Buenos Aires or Rio, and there's no reason why it should go through San Francisco or Los Angeles. But if you take the AE map, the azimuthal map, and you lay it on top and you plot the flight then, so on a globe, it would turn into like this big arcing triangle thing. But if you lay it on top of the AE map, it flattens out almost entirely. Mm-hmm. And you see that time and time again. There's some great videos out there. And I actually put them in my my playlist. I don't have very many playlists, but one's called Flat Earth Related. And there's two on there. One's called Plane Routes Exposed. And the other one's called The Plane Proves the Plane, which is kind of clever. I see what he did there. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what it shows. Not only does it show that all these extreme angle flights turn into really shallow dog legs or straight lines in an AE map, but it also shows that some nonstop flights, because people were bugging me, and we'll get into that in Clue 9, we'll blow up through that. But he was showing the video that someone else was put up there was saying, look, there's some nonstop flights that aren't really nonstop. And by that, for those of you who don't know, who haven't traveled internationally, if you fly from a nonstop flight, from point A to point B in the Southern Hemisphere, your flight can actually land and refuel. But if nobody gets on, nobody gets off, and no baggage is exchanged, it still counts as a nonstop. And we only found out about that recently because people in social media were posting it on their Facebook page. They were saying, yes, this is a nonstop. We stop in whatever this island is, or stop in this Middle Eastern country for no apparent reason. But, they're saying, well, because nothing happened there, it doesn't count. It's still a nonstop. It's like, that's a bunch of crap. But yeah, that's what number 7 is. And we can continue more on that when we get to 9, because 9 had to follow up on 7.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Yeah, let's make our way to 9 then. Let's just jump ahead because we're running on time.
Oh no worries.
Okay.
Because 8 was just to pick me up. Creative force, that was a motivational thing just for people that don't know. Because people were emailing me saying, "Hey, you're giving me small world syndrome, and it's kind of depressing." And so that was more. It's like, look, that was my big motivational speech. It's like, here's why it's a cool thing. Everybody, becomes way more special, and it's not necessarily a rah-rah speech, but it shows the significance of everybody. But when I got to number 9, the only reason I made number 9, which was the magic show, was because people were emailing me and saying, because I said, well, look, there's very few, if not none at all, nonstop flights in the Southern Hemisphere. But turns out there's like 4 or 5. There's just a handful of them, and people were ignoring everything else, all the connections, everything else I had said, and they said, well, there's a nonstop from like Auckland, New Zealand to Santiago, Chile, which immediately disproves the whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, it's like, this is killing me. So I sat in front of my computer for an entire week and just watched some live flight data, which you have watched too.
I was going to say something. Finish his thought.
Watch some live flight data on planefinder.net. And I couldn't find the planes kept dropping off the screen, and I was going, why are the planes dropping off the screen? And then I realized the entire southern hemisphere, all the plane data is being erased. So once the plane gets 150, 200 miles offshore, it's dropped off the map entirely, and it doesn't come back on the map until they're almost to their destination. And that was it. It's like, of course that's what they would do, because the one thing because the routes are so screwed up in the southern hemisphere, you don't want to show them in real time, so you just hide them all entirely, which is why it was called the Magic Show.
And I think there was one night, I know I did. I took screen captures where all the data was reset to like last update 45 years ago.
Yeah.
And there were all these planes flying in the southern hemisphere, like thousands of them.
Yeah. But you and I watched this, and we've got some screenshots. Not that it would do any good, but if anyone wants them, email me. I'll send them to you. Where somebody, I think in the GPS sector, just was messing with the system. They were showing just fleets of planes all out, they were the last update on it was 45 years ago, and they were flying at like 300 miles an hour and like 5,000 feet over the ocean. And some were coming straight out of Antarctica. I mean, they were all over the place. And I didn't pick this up on myself. Somebody emailed me, goes, "You got to look at the GPS system." And I don't know if it was overkill or if they were trying to get our attention.
I wish I'd used the video screen capture because it only ran for maybe a half hour.
Yeah, it wasn't on very long. And I'd emailed a couple people as well and said, "Look, you got to see this." And it was really, really cool. But the point is that you could see the contrast between the two. And that was, normally it is a ghost town down there. And then for one small chunk of a day, it turned into this what looked like a military invasion. That's all I could describe.
Talk about an anomaly, right? It's just
Yeah, it wasn't like they put a few planes. They put, I best count, I think almost 2,000 extra planes on the map. And it was crazy. But it looked normal for 1 second. It looked like the northern hemisphere. And then it went back to a ghost town.
Somebody probably got fired that day. Somebody in that group, the GPS, whoever runs that, probably said, "Yeah, I put 20 planes in there. This Mark Sargent character is really, causing an upset." And I got a call from up top, and instead of 200, the guy tapped in 2,000 by accident. And,
or yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was ridiculous. It was so overt. It was ludicrous. So.
When there's more planes in the southern hemisphere like that than there are out of JFK and LAX and.
Yeah, and they were all, and some of the routes were unbelievable. You were following some of the tracking, some of the routes, and they were all over the place. It was silly.
They were just like making busy work too. It's like just do something, and they just kind of flew.
Yeah. And when I was initially looked at it, I was going, "Holy smokes!" They fixed the error. They found out a way. But yeah, it took us 2 seconds to look at it, and there was all the planes were wrong. All the data tracking on the planes were wrong.
It was pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
Here we go. The big one. Hiding God.
Hiding
Number
God. Hiding God was because I made that because there were a bunch of people that I had so much scripture sent to me from numerous religions that I had to address it, because they were all saying, "Look, you're dancing around the issue," and that is their issue was, it's like, look, is the enclosure proof of intelligent design? Is it proof of a creator? Is it proof of God? And I said, well, yeah, it is, because even though in 5 in status quo, I said that, the authority was trying to keep religion from gaining a firm foothold. The truth is, objectively, what, even the most cynical person, what you would describe as intelligent design or God, if you're looking for proof, that's about as good as you're going to get. I mean, some people looking for the Holy Grail, some people looking for the Ark of the Covenant, some looking, for the Spear of Destiny. No, this is it. You want a handprint of God, of a creator. Anyone that can build a system this big, at the very least, you're gonna say, well, they're way, way more advanced than we are. So that's when I was it's like, look, let's look for the whistleblowers. Anyone that wants to come out. And I was basically using it as a motivational thing. It's like, look, talk to people. Bring it up, of course, delicately, but talk to people in the church, talk to people in industry, and because they were hiding God at that point. So, and
I want to add something to that, because we are talking to so many people on a big network now. The word God is offensive to some people. Unfortunately, it's taken a negative connotation. I know for me, and just going forward with everybody, because I feel like we're building a relationship with everyone, the word God has become something all-encapsulating. It's bigger than just Christianity. It means so much to so many people. So when you say the inventor, the creator, the programmer, when I die, am I going to get derezzed? Whoever that is that I'm dealing with. Yeah, God's a great word. So I just want to say that for me, it's not affiliated or connected to any group or religion or right. Is that where you're coming from?
No,
on that?
yeah. And I touched on the big five. Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity. I wasn't going to play favorites. Look, everyone's got their own view on it, but the point is that all of them believed for a long time that we lived in an enclosed system, and that changed 500 years ago.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. Oh, you know what? I hear music. I think that's God calling. All right, we're going to go to break. We'll come right back.
Sundays on True Frequency Radio.
I hope he doesn't tell her. It'll be awkward.
Music we can say?
Yeah.
And we are back. This is Jonathan the Wingman, and I'm here with Mark Sargent on Strange World.
Hello.
That is strange. That was a strange voice. Wasn't expecting that.
That was me trying to do a nerdy British guy.
Right on. I just wanted to say something about God because I don't want to give people the wrong impression. I wholeheartedly believe in God. For me, it's that spiritual connection to all things, and that includes people, everybody. With that, I always tease. I think I've said this to you before. If I was God, you would wake up without things like the constant of gravity. You might be floating on the ceiling one day in your bedroom and the next being compressed by 10 times the gravity of the earth. And we can touch on gravity. But, I would also forget to make flavors like strawberry and things that you enjoy. So be glad that there's a God that's beyond my ego, because I'd be a terrible God in that regard. Yeah.
Good. See, I think I'd be pretty good, because I'd be all about having fun and making sure that people had a pretty good time.
You're a nice guy.
Thank you. But that's usually attributed to somebody else, so maybe I shouldn't go down that road.
I'm more draconian, by the way.
Oh, good.
I would only give you 2 flavors. It'd be like, if you want ice cream, there'd be chocolate and vanilla, but we're all out of vanilla. And then before you go to complain, I'd say, but look, I gave you ice cream.
Terrible.
Anyway.
Terrible.
So hiding God. Is there anything you want to say on that? Because we went to break the music.
No. That was basically it, because it segued into the next one anyway.
Okay, and that would be us. In relation to that is Souls in the System.
Souls in the System, which was based. That title was based off a title of a game I helped develop years ago. But I always liked the concept. And
I was thinking more Ghost in the Machine.
Damn it! You took it.
Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah. Well, that's where I got the title. That's where I took the title from. Yeah. I own that album. I think it was 1981 or 2 by the Police. And had that cool little LED display, red, funky thing. But I never thought that title was good. I actually thought a better title would have been Souls in the System, and that's a direct reference to Ghost in the Machine.
You and I are so much alike. I swear. I would think you grew up over here on the Jersey Shore. We hit the same arcades. Like, you're a idiot like me, right? You probably plunked lots of quarters.
Lots of quarters. Lots. I
listened to the Police and all that good stuff.
Yeah. I was a big fan of the Police and Sting. But Souls in the System really was kind of turning the whole thing into not just motivation, but it's like, look, this conspiracy. I don't even call it a conspiracy anymore. It's like, look, this reality, if we are in an enclosed system, an enclosed world, if it is true, then it is the only thing that I think that can turn us around as a civilization. And I started off small, like I usually do with the astronauts, with the Astronauts Gone Wild video documentary that was done, where they were trying to get the astronauts to put their hand on the Bible, and they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't swear on the Bible that they went to the moon, and that bugged me, kind of like the moon missions, for years, because I couldn't understand. I was like, what are they? Are they devout Christians? Are they really that religious? Because people lie under oath all the time. Plus, are you really under oath if you're not in court? If somebody puts a Bible in front of you, you're really going to get in trouble. But they wouldn't do it. And the more I looked at it, the more I realized that the enclosed world, the Truman Show, whatever you want to call it, if it is realized, it changes. A lot of people say, well, it's not going to change it. No, it will absolutely change things. And I've given the Santa Claus reference before. I'm going to give it again. And that is the naughty and nice list that we all know from the Santa Claus legend doesn't mean anything. It's just a naughty and nice list. Doesn't mean anything unless you see Santa Claus in your living room eating cookies. And once you do, that list now means something. And by that, it's now a scorecard. So let's say it's an enclosed world, and this place becomes way more intimate, and you realize there could be, not necessarily there is, but there could be something watching over you. If you want to say that it's sinister, it's fine. I'm going to go the other route and say it's not sinister. But if there's something watching over you, then there could be a scorecard. And if there is a scorecard, are you going to do the things that you would normally do? You're going to run a red light? That may be something small, right? Are you going to kidnap? Are you going to lie, cheat, steal? Are you ever thinking about murdering anybody? Could a military even function in that capacity? So I took it even further. I said, look, wars end, hate crimes end, except for the psychopaths. All the goodness that is in us at that point comes to the surface. And some people will say, well, it's forced. It's like, no, it's not forced. It's a gentle suggestion. It is a push. It is we become what we could be. And I'm not saying that civilization would do a complete 180 right away, but I think at the very least we would do a 90-degree hard right or a hard left away from the abyss that we seem to be plunging ourselves into. And for those say, well, no, I know there's some optimists out there that say, oh, no, we can come out of this by ourselves. We can do this on our own. It's like, no, we can't. Look, I'm resolved to that. I've watched, I'm old enough that I've seen what we're capable of, and I've seen that we have a real hard time. And I'm going to point most of the blame on men, even though I am a man. Our lust for power and everything, and we just don't seem to have the capacity to do it for ourselves. So this is a plea for anyone that's out there that's involved, in the hiding of this, not just the people on the ground, but maybe the people that are involved at the highest levels, which is like, look, we need help, and this could do it. If this, we're not talking about a major shift in civilization, direct action on our population. I'm just saying, if the enclosed world was revealed, we would become better. So that's my rant on that.
And I had something similar to that in terms of if something appeared to everybody, where whether you were religious or spiritual or atheist or agnostic, it would be irrefutable that everybody would have to then look at the elephant in the room, so to speak.
Yeah.
Just like the flat Earth.
Yeah.
And my suggestion was like, what if in the middle of the night, and I think I shared this with you, somebody appeared to everybody at the foot of their bed, floating in, kind of like Dr. Manhattan or something,
Nice.
But something that was a form that everybody would have seen the same thing. So there's no, well, I saw the Archangel Michael, well, I saw a jinn, or you see what I'm saying?
Good.
It would have to be something definitive that everybody could describe.
Yeah.
No matter what your belief is, it appears. It's a phenomenological experience, and everybody has it.
Yeah.
And the message is simply this. I'm giving you 1 week to get your crap together. You're going to stop killing. You're going to stop with the greed. You're going to stop with everything you're doing. If you don't, it's over. Done.
Yeah.
You decide. The next day, everybody kind of looks sick to their stomach, as if they just got slapped with an IRS audit, a bankruptcy note, the worst of the worst. It would be very sobering. It would almost be like, I hate to say this, but the week after 9/11, I don't know how it was. Where were you living, by the way, when that
I
happened?
was in Colorado.
Okay, I was here in New Jersey, New York.
Yeah.
So the feeling was a lot different because it happened, locally.
Yeah.
But there was this, I don't know what you want to call it. People are on their best behavior and considerate and somber and holding the door, and everybody kind of knew. We were all on the same page at that moment, even the world.
Yeah.
It's just there was this pause of everything. Stores didn't care about selling things. Everybody was like, it just shifted things. Outside of a week or two, people started going back to their old, I hate to say bad behaviors.
But
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think in the same instance, if something like this happened, or if the flat Earth was revealed, or the truth was divulged by the powers that be, we would have that week of, oh my God. I don't think people would go crazy in the streets and start panicking.
Yeah.
But I think there would be this sick feeling on this look of confusion on a lot of people's faces if they just had an aha moment and said, oh my God, what does this mean? Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. There'd be a lot of processing.
Processing. That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, it's like, okay, initially, the reaction would be very selfish. It's like, okay, how does this affect my family and I immediately? And maybe it's not selfish, but that's what they would think. It's like, okay, how does this affect my daily life? Does my company still exist? Does this affect my commute to work? Am I still going to be able to get food and water and all that other stuff? But after that, then there's some long-term stuff that sets in. It's like, okay, for the religious people, how does this affect my church? Because I guarantee there's a whole bunch of churches out there that would immediately start doing fundraisers. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna do a mission to go touch the edge. One of the first instincts for most people is, look, we're gonna want to see it for ourselves. And if they can't go up altitude-wise, which most people won't. I mean, the rich, super rich will try. They'll try to go to the edge and brave the elements, and I guarantee there will absolutely be churches built on the ice just for this, because it is what so many people have wanted for the longest time. They want the meaning, and even though the wall or the barrier or the enclosure doesn't have the meaning written on it, it's still there. They can still touch it. And at that point, it becomes a massive symbol of not just hope but security. Because it changes. We're not a ball flying in space at that point. We're not this insignificant little speck. It becomes a giant, wonderful studio apartment where everybody's in the same boat. And at that point, I'm going to take the high road here and say that people will work together. And that is my firm wish. That is my agenda. But
let me say this though. I think you and I are both thinking this through from a first world perspective, right? Because we have,
of course,
affluence and other things afforded to us.
Of course,
people in a third world, just so we were talking about prepping, they don't care if the world is flat or if the economy sinks or or if the edge is the definitive boundary. It's not going to change their localized world. Just like if you didn't live near New York City at the time, you were kind of removed from it. Right?
Yeah.
It's just like the naughty and nice list. We hear things, oh, the Amazon rainforest is getting cut down, or this is, happening. But we're like, well, how the hell does that affect me? I can still buy water and I can still, burn paper. So until it gets into your own backyard kind of thing, it's issue.
But also the industrialized nations that are exploiting those countries, their opinions would probably change. I mean, there'd be a lot of policy change. And you still got to ask, because regardless of what, whether you're first, second, or third world, most people, by the way, don't know that second world was actually just Russia, the whole Soviet Union.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Most people like, because everyone goes from first world to third world. Nobody knows what second world is. It's like, so second world, I had to look that up. It was like second world was the Soviet Union.
That's funny. I never thought of that.
Why they were put in second? Well, we probably did that. But regardless of where you are, you still, most of the population of this planet still deals with religion in one way or the other. I know most of it's the big five that I mentioned earlier, but there's a lot of smaller religions out there. But they would all have some sort of stake in it, and through their respective churches, synagogues, mosques, whatever, they would all get the message. It would all filter down, with the exception of some tribal stuff here and there. But and of course for them, they probably had never, that didn't change. It's like, oh, by the way, did you know the world was flat? It's like, when was it round? We always thought it was flat. Right. But yeah. But
I think the governments, those that know about the truth about a lot of things beyond this, right? We can go into those topics another time or tonight. Yep. It's kind of like telling somebody, let's say they're just doing their thing, they're typing on their computer, they're working in an office, and you see this big spider dropping down behind their head. right?
Yeah.
And you know they're going to freak out if you tell them, oh my God, don't move, there's a big spider. Let's say it's a big spider.
Yeah.
You can either whack it out of the way, or you could just leave it be and let it drop to the floor and go on its way.
Yeah.
But that person is oblivious to it because behind them, really, it has no influence over them.
Yeah.
Until you tell them, oh my God, there's a spider, don't move.
Yeah.
Now, knowing the person, if their psychology is to freak out, they're going to go, and scream, right?
Yeah.
Or they're going to say, get it, and they'll freeze up. But in any case, you told them something that doesn't really apply to them. Just like, and this is where, again, I'm not condoning what they do.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that probably go on that we really shouldn't know about because we would act stupid like that. We would freak out.
Yeah, there are. No question. And some are done, what I call the greater good, and we all do it to a certain degree. They just do it on a much, much larger scale. Right. And in this case, there would be a lot of people freak out. And there's a lot of people who get mad, right off the bat. And, they get angry. It's like, because they want to point fingers. And, nobody likes being lied to, even if it's for a good reason. Or what they consider. It's look, it was for your own good. We didn't want to hurt you. We didn't want you to freak out. We didn't want you to start burning things down. And the argument then is like, well, you should have told us. That whole song and dance. But at the same time, it's like I get it. I can see both sides, no question. But for me now it's like, look, I don't know what you have left to lose. Because and I stated this in Clue 11, just the world's not getting better. We know that it hasn't. It's been sliding for a while now. So if you're gonna make a move, if you're gonna help, you can either help or you can turn it into something else. You want to stage an event and use this as part of the catalyst. Yeah, that's your prerogative. I'm just saying you should probably, and I'm speaking to the authority here, you should probably do the right thing. This is your chance to do it.
Oh, let me do this then. Let me throw a big curveball at you and change the direction of this.
All right.
We talked about outer space. We talked about the Earth being still a globe. We talked about it now being flat.
Yeah.
What about the idea of a hollow Earth? Because we've also touched about aliens a little bit and why the governments, are blocking it.
Yeah. No, the hollow Earth. Again, I've mentioned before where the hollow Earth absolutely dovetails into this. I was a big hollow Earth guy for years, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I totally bought into it. And actually, proving the hollow Earth could possibly prove the enclosure as well. I don't believe in coincidences when it comes to this. Admiral Byrd, if he went to the North Pole, if his diaries or whatever the secret diaries were true, that he found the hollow Earth and that, there's a big cavernous, remember, we're only living in a very, very thin band, so it doesn't take much to build a civilization. Even if you had, a 10-mile high, 1,000-mile wide cavern, you could put massive amounts of people in there. If the hollow Earth has more civilizations or older civilizations than us or previous tenants to this place, once you find that, you by default find the true structure of the world. That's the best part. If you solve one of those two mysteries, you solve the whole thing. If you solve the hollow Earth and it's a globe, then it's a globe. If you solve the hollow Earth and it's an enclosed world, then it's enclosed. You don't even have to go to Antarctica at that point because you can extrapolate from the hollow Earth model, which I think is fascinating.
Sure.
Yeah.
And not for nothing. I mean, now with that in mind, it's possible. This is just a possibility because everything's relative in the universe, right? What if the Earth? We think of it as a lot of people think of it as a globe size. It has definitive 25,000 miles at the equator or something, I think, in circumference.
Yeah.
But what if the flat Earth is one segment on a larger Earth, like that's inside, in a capsule, almost like what would that be? Like a contact lens enclosure?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's more of those.
No. Yeah, there's more of those spread around this one planet. And so that when you go under the Earth into a hollow Earth or at the edges, you're actually connecting to other parts of a larger world.
Very,
still floating in space.
Very possible. And that was actually part of Matt Boylan's from the NASA channel, his theory.
Was that right?
Yeah. He was a big believer. He called them puddles, and he did a kind of a odd artist rendering at the end of one of his videos where he showed different AE maps kind of stacked next to each other on a big frozen plain. Kind of like, if it was organized, it'd be like an egg carton. Each hole in the egg carton would represent an Earth like this. But he did that, and it turned out it looked pretty cool. He wasn't, and I totally get where he's coming from because he's an artist. He doesn't like the idea of any restrictions. So an enclosed system, any sort of dome, he does not dig it at all. even though my argument I still think holds true, and that is, look, you got to keep it somewhat contained because, at the very least, but the petri dish argument you were talking about, because of cross contamination. A civilization is ours, and I know we're advanced, but we've got a real savage side to us. The first thing we would do is try to conquer, and any other next door worlds. There's a bunch of science fiction movies where they've touched on, it's like, you can't let the human race, go throughout the cosmos. I mean, they even went back as far as, what was it? The Day the Earth Stood Still. Back in that movie, that was in the 50s, and they were talking about that concept. It's like, you can't let man get, too far out of his fenced area. So,
and let me just say this, because there's got to be people. We don't have Colin yet.
No, not yet, but we will soon.
Yeah, and they must be like, oh my God, these guys are driving me nuts, the stuff that they're suggesting. So let's throw this all into one big question.
Okay.
All right, what about the sun and the moon? What about stars and planets? What about meteorites in the sky? What about everybody who's ever seen a shooting star? All this stuff combined.
Okay. All right. We can do this, and we've got 7 minutes roughly. Okay. So what we're going to do, sun and the moon, from an enclosed standpoint, if you think it's a Truman Show type enclosure, then sun and the moon we'll get to in a second. Planets and the stars would be no different than, if I know nobody goes to planetariums anymore, but think of a really, really big planetarium. So with the the stars and the planets are just highly rendered, beautiful images. They do not diminish, I'm not taking away astrology, because people say you're killing astrology. It's like, no, because astrology is really a giant clock system based on what's in the sky. They don't have to be millions of light years away. And now for the people, a side note to that, because people have mentioned the Coriolis effect to me, where, the stars will rotate in a different direction in the southern hemisphere versus the northern hemisphere. Think about if the planetarium is that big, you can fit multiple models inside the same one. So even though you think you're looking at the same stars, you're not. For someone that's in the north versus somebody in the south, we're doing this in software now. We're doing this in games now. So the Coriolis effect is just completely, it is software driven. You want to call it divine software, that's fine. Changing the spin in the sky when it comes to, depending on location, it's called a programming instance. We've been doing programming instances for at least 10 years. That is stuff we are currently delving into now.
Oh, by the way, I got to share something with you. And I may have shared it before. When NASA did a time lapse of going over the Earth, and they showed this time lapse, the stars don't line up right with the Coriolis effect. I think they made a mistake.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I got to show you this video after this program.
Yeah. NASA makes mistakes all the time, and they're glaring. I'm sorry. Heaven help you, NASA, if you call in and I'm on the air with you, because I've got stuff lined up for you. Don't show up at my house.
I apologize to NASA, by the way. I don't think everything you guys, if you're listening, do is fake. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it's not necessarily all true.
I'm saying it's some bad production, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's all horrible. But it's Lord, it's not good. But anyway,
job security.
Yeah, there you go. Nice. Thank you, man. Nice. You have friends in NASA. I know you do.
What?
No, I'm kidding. So the sun and the moon. The sun is really, I'm going to use your hamster cage reference there, and the sun is just really a big light source in the sky. I'm not necessarily going to call it a light bulb, but it's a big light source in the sky. It's its own projection system. The moon, completely different. Although they seem to be about the same size in the sky, they could be very well the same size in the sky. If it's an enclosed system, they don't have to be, much bigger or smaller. You can change the perspectives. The moon, again, if anyone wants to see some interesting stuff on the moon, and I know I've mentioned this before, you can either Google lunar waves or Google Crow 777, that's CRROW 777, and just look at these videos he has out there. And when you look at a lunar wave and you see a refresh rate, and for those of you who aren't tech savvy, you've got a visual display glitch or a translation issue between the HD camera that's filming it and the moon. If there's a refresh rate happening in the moon, you got to question what the moon is. And it's pretty amazing stuff. I know we're running out of time, but meteors. People ask me about meteors all the time. What about meteors? If you see meteors coming in the sky, doesn't that prove that there's outer space and there's a cosmos? No, because anyone that can build a structure this big, adding meteors at high altitude at speed is easy. It is super easy. You inject, maybe with a rail gun, maybe with something else, a piece of metal ore at a shallow angle. You let the atmosphere and friction do the rest. Hope it detonates before it hits the surface, and make sure that you don't aim at any population centers. I don't know who was at the switch when that Russian thing happened 2 years ago, but that was way too close for comfort.
Can I tell you what I think meteors are?
Sure.
I think it's like little pellets that have like good bacteria and things that we need to help us, and somebody throws it through the top of the hamster cage to the grid.
Wow.
What do you think of that? I just thought of that.
That's really good. I may have to use that. That's really good from a design standpoint. That's actually that's pretty slick.
Right?
Yeah, I like that.
And by the way, on the moon too, I was thinking about this. I've seen some models where the sun and the moon are floating around the flat Earth, like opposed to each other.
Yeah.
And somebody said, well, how can you cast a shadow? How can you have a crescent moon? I was thinking, okay, what if the moon was like a bowl? Because we only see one side of it all the time.
Yeah.
So it's actually, was that concave, not convex? It'd be going into itself? It's concave?
Yeah.
Okay. So when the sun is to its left or right, it's going to show only, it's going to cast a shadow from the edge of that moon, casting it inward.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Creating that crescent effect.
Yeah.
And that's why it's always fixed in proportion to the sun as well.
Yeah.
So they're dancing around each other. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
And that's what casts a shadow inward.
Yeah.
Real quick, let me see. I think we're getting short on time. I wanted to ask you, let me do some rapid fire questions with you.
Sure. Go.
Okay. You're just going to say yes or no and give me a 10-second answer. This is going to be hard for you.
Okay. Go. Do it.
UFOs. Yes or no?
Yes. And they could be janitors or maintenance team.
Or eating us, right?
Or eating us. Well, you said 10 seconds. So.
Okay. That was only 7. Right, is it Matrix, yes or no?
Possible, absolutely. 13th floor Matrix could be very possible. Could be inside this system as well. Absolutely.
Okay. Same thing with a holodeck.
Yep. Holodeck, Matrix, 13th floor, all pretty much the same thing, although a holodeck would be also a physical structure. So yeah, the planetarium could also be a holodeck.
Okay. Yes or no? Are we going to prove that we're in an enclosed world, and when?
I hope we do it within the next year or two.
Wow,
I would love to see it because I think we're running out of time.
That's bold.
Thank you.
Okay. You know what? I don't know what else to add. Is there anything you want to add?
I got something else because we got seconds. I would like to, because she has been so diligent, I would like to take a few seconds to say a special thanks to my mother, who
I forgot you had a mom. I thought it was
she's
you
up
in a simulation.
She's up in Whidbey. I have a real mom. I wasn't born in a tube. She's up in Whidbey Island, Washington, and she.
Hey,
even though she never misses a show, she's listened to just about everything, and I have never thanked her for that. I say, don't listen to the show. You don't have to listen to it live. And she's like, no. And then she listens to it. So anyway.
I can hear this voice. I've never heard your mom, spoken to your mom and know your mom, but it's like, why do you have to hang out with that John character? He's always putting strange ideas in your head. Anyway, hey, listen, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mark.
Hey, man. Thank you.
See you next week.